All right, we're going to get started. I'm going to give you one more technical reminder just in case the new people have joined, which is that you want to, if you can hear me, you should click on the left-hand toolbar on the little hand that says raise hand. If you can hear me, raise your hand. Awesome. Okay, great. A bunch of you can hear me. Okay, so then to unraise your hand, you just want to click it again. That will unraise your hand. And then to make sure you can see the whole screen as it was intended to be seen, you want to click on the whiteboard there. And then click on the little arrow, and it'll say full screen without toolbar, and you want to click full screen without toolbar. That will allow you to see the presentation sort of in all of its glory. Cool. And now that we have all that technical stuff out of the way, I want to introduce you to Eric Ming. Eric is an awesome, actually former labor folk who now works for the New Organizing Institute. He's from Wisconsin and is the digital manager at NOI. He's very new in that role, so excited to have him on board. Before that, though, he worked in Wisconsin, especially around the recall elections and working with labor folks there, so he knows us really well. And is going to teach us a little bit about photography best practices. So we're not going to be able to get into every photography question that you have today, but he'll give you a really basic overview, and I saw his presentation already, and I already learned stuff just from scrolling through his presentation, so I know it's going to be super informative for everyone. So without further ado, Eric Ming.
Well, hey everyone. Glad you could have me today. So we're going to go through some photography best practices, and then at the end we're going to talk a little bit about what you can do with those photographs once you have them. So just a reminder that we're going to be using the hashtag OneUDigital. 1U is kind of the hashtag for just anything union related on Twitter, just for future reference. So a little bit more about me. As you can see, I grew up in Wisconsin, and the Wisconsin protests of 2011 played a big part in my organizing history. I worked for Senator Feingold coming out of college in 2010 and didn't know what I was going to do. I was unemployed. All of a sudden the protests happened, so I thought, hey, so I hopped on a bus straight to Madison, spent 2 weeks sleeping on the Capitol, sleeping on couches, unemployed, without a lot of money, just eating free food and protesting because I didn't know what else to do. So eventually joined the labor side, joined the recalls, and ended up now here working at New Organizing Institute. So just want to go over a little bit about how to take a great photo, what makes a photo great, and just some simple things you can do to really show off your work and really show off the amazing thing you guys are doing across the country. We're going to focus a lot on iPhone stuff. That it's okay if you don't have an iPhone. Most of the principles, all of the principles we're going to talk about, you don't need an iPhone for. That's just the phone specifically that we're going to have a couple tricks for. But most of the apps we're also going to talk about are also for Android and other phones. So even if you have a regular camera, you can still do a lot of the stuff we're doing just by uploading this stuff on your computer. So the first thing, we want to talk about what in general makes a good photo. The number one thing is action. If you take one thing away from photography for organizing, you should have action in your photos because you want to shed a light on what you're doing and give a further explanation. Photos catch attention. Words are often hard to describe. So use these photos to tell a story, to show people knocking doors, making calls, working as a team, stuff that can motivate others to action. So the point is also, how do we capture and create these engaging moments? Sometimes at a rally, what I like to do is kind of try to look for a high perch and just sit there for 10 or 15 minutes snapping photos as people walk by, trying to capture natural magic. Sometimes you need to, I'm sure some of you have familiarity with this, try to wrangle everybody, try to get everybody in one big group and force everyone to smile. You just got to read the room, think about what's happening in the action. If people are marching, maybe you want to get a perch, maybe you want to march in front of them, like run in front of them to make so you can get them coming at you, and just kind of see what people are comfortable with and where you think you can get your best shot. So now you've got the camera, what's next? The number one thing when taking photos, especially if you're organizing work, or step out in the field is to make sure subjects are being okay with your photos. Now, different organizations are going to have different policies, but the number one safe way to do this is through some type of waiver. Most campaigns and most organizations are going to have this type of waiver to make sure folks are okay with their likeness being used publicly, whether that's on social media, in brochures, on websites. I've had the experience a couple times where people in the field have taken photos, brought them back to me, and then I asked them, are they okay with me sharing this? And if they don't know, you can't use the photo. So really make sure when you're taking photos, say, even just to be comfortable saying to the person, hey, we think we might share this on Facebook, on Twitter, on our website. Are you okay with us using your likeness? Another one thing is just no such thing as taking too many photos. When I'm out at events taking photos, I probably will take 20 pictures and use maybe only 2 or 3. You know, don't be afraid to, if you see a good shot, to take 6 or 7, because only one of those might be good. Especially if people are talking, their mouth will be closed, they'll be making a weird expression on their face. You know, it often takes a lot of different attempts to get one good photo. And if you are collecting stories, take photos to supplement those stories. Don't have people just fill out a form. Have people take a picture that can go with it. And again, action, action, action. This is a great example from out in the field. You know, you could write a paragraph on what's going on here, but nothing might be immediately as compelling as this photo. And you can get a sense of what's going on simply by looking at their faces, at their T-shirt, at and their hard hats, just kind of getting an idea of what they're doing. So I'd like folks to just take a look at this photo for a second after thinking about some of the principles we were talking about, and just think about what they think of this photo. What makes it good? What makes it bad?
So everyone, if you could just send us some notes, just go to the notes function right here. Hi. And let us know what you think. Someone says, boring. Totally fair. Other thoughts? They look bored. I'm with you. Other thoughts? Looks boring. Okay. What about it looks boring? Like, what about it particularly is boring?
Mm-hmm.
Can you all be more specific?
They look asleep.
Pretty horrible.
Body language, yeah. Grimacing faces. Look at the activist in the middle, kind of giving side eye at everybody. There's a lady grabbing her nose. Another thing is just it's dark. Who wants to go to an office where it's dark and everyone's just kind of sitting around looking bored? You know, if you post this on your Facebook page, what volunteer can be like, I want to go sit with them? You got to do that. And if anyone happened to be in this photo, I apologize. But so when you think about this, you might have thought, oh, we have all these people in our office, it's packed. But if you don't take it the right angle, you don't see what people are doing.
It says effective photo for the opposition. They're bored with Michelle and Barack.
Yeah, and they have their candidates in the photo with everyone looking bored.
That's such a good point.
Those are great comments.
Awesome.
So and then I wanted to go over kind of just some 4 main principles. So I want you to take a look at this photo and just kind of think about it. Think about if it's interesting. Some of the things, like I noticed right off the bat, there are tons of letters. It looks like that kid has a long night ahead of him, or a long day ahead of him. You can't see his face. You kind of get distracted by the other stuff in the photo. But with just a little bit of change and filling the frame, you get his face, you get more of his bright red sweater. You don't see the stacks and stacks of letters he's obviously folding or putting together. It just makes such a more effective photo. Another one is this one. So when you look at this photo, you know, it's great. He's filling the frame, but you got that weird bright light. You got that luminescent light coming down, which, you know, maybe an outdoor photo you like because it shows the light, but you're indoors, it's just kind of weird. It's very distracting. You're not thinking about the rest of the photo. You're just thinking about that light. So when you take a photo, just remember to think about that and how, if there's a shine. So this next one, what is the first thing people notice in this photo?
And you want to give us some notes? What's the first thing you notice, y'all? Flash glare. Who's in the portrait?
Exactly. That's a creepy guy in the painting. Yes, that is exactly right. You know, if you saw that photo on a Facebook page or on a website, you would just be like, who is that guy and why is he watching that young man? So number one, consider the background. What now? While he may be making phone calls standing up, which you probably don't have a lot of volunteers to do, the background's much better. So just make sure to look out for those things. So this last one, once again, there are just tons of letters in front of you. The two folks there are just sitting at the table, looking at each other. They look like they're kind of bored, kind of confused, don't know what they're doing. Action, action, action. You should never share pictures where folks are calling, or where folks aren't calling, knocking doors, signing people up, doing something. So I want to share some photos now, looking at some of those 4 principles we talked about, making sure there's action, good lighting, filling the frame, considering the background. And while most of these photos are either from, either the AFL-CIO or the Barack Obama campaign, just remember that all of these photos are ones that can be taken out in the field really easily if you take a lot of photos and just kind of think about what each of these principles. So as you're looking at these, just remember, try to think about, events that you've held that were similar to these, where you have to be standing to take these photos, the different angles you could be standing at. You could be behind them. You could be to the side. Always to the side is usually good because you can catch both faces. This photo is one of my favorite. This guy is smiling. He's doing an action with his hands. This is another one. It's an action photo. You got 2 folks, happy as can be, marching in the front. And then this great picture. Talk about action. You have an iron worker working on rebuilding the One World Trade Center. And as you can see by the engagement level, the number of people who liked this, the number of people who shared this, this was obviously something that people really responded to. The first comment there, union workers make this country great. And when you see this photo, it evokes those images. You don't even need the text to feel like, damn, this feels good, like, proud to be my union. And then I want to show you some pictures that these are just volunteers and field organizers took on their phones. So these aren't professionals, but you see what they're doing? They're focusing on lighting. They're showing action. This is one that's just from a house. While it may not, look professional, it definitely has the action. It's filling the frame, and it's showing folks good lighting as well. The one on the right, they're playing with some space. They're playing with lighting. Here's some more. And as we talked about, as you can see on this photo on the left here, they're sharing a little bit of the story. So instead of just tweeting or sharing a story about Aiden was a rock star voter registration volunteer, they're actually sharing a picture so folks who see this can actually see this person in action, that you're not just making up a person. There's someone out there doing that. Maybe folks ran into that person. They can identify. Clipboards. Clipboards are a favorite of campaign or photography. It's something that always really performs well. People love clicking like and share on pictures of clipboards. When we talk about stacks of mail, it's a little different, but clipboards, they inspire action. When people see clipboards, they think of canvassing, they think of knocking doors. So think about stuff like that too. Are you preparing bottles of water, food, and everything for GeoTV? Are you think about the things you're working on and how you can integrate that. Some photos of meetings. Give people an inside look at your organization so folks can see what everyone's doing on a daily basis. Recognition. Always show recognition of your volunteers, activists, leaders are always one of the key things you want to see in photographs. Kids. Kids always win whenever you're taking photographs. Especially with a really activist message like this. You look at the time is now, all in for citizenship, and they have the phone number and the call to action right there. And you see it and you're just like, you want to take action because of that picture. You're not reading the text on the side. You're looking at that picture, you're seeing the phone number, and you're saying, this is something I need to do. And it's such just a great image. It's very clear the kids are the center and the kids are what this photograph is all about. And then one important thing, especially this is kind of like another basic rule for photography, is the rule of thirds. So as you can see in this photograph that kind of lays out the rule of thirds, a square is divided into 3 parts, both horizontally and vertically, creating this grid. Now when you look at this picture, the tree is placed along one of these along one of these intersections. So the idea of the rule of thirds is that, when we're looking at things visually, we're not attracted to the center, we're attracted to these thirds. So if we want to really engage photographs, we want to place our image not in the center, but to the right, to the left, to the top, to the bottom, in one of these thirds. So looking at this in another real time, you look at this boat. If this boat was in the center, this photograph wouldn't be near as interesting or give you the idea. When you look at this, you get the idea of setting sail, going out on the water. You get the horizon. If this boat was in the center, it's kind of a boring photograph, to be honest. So I also want to include some iPhone tips. If you guys do have iPhones, so here's just a couple things to try out next time you're taking photographs or even right after this. You can one-click tap and focus. You can hold to lock the focus. This is one that a lot of people don't use, but when we're talking about lighting, is you can tap dark areas before you take a picture to expose them before you shoot. So if your photo seems too dark, tap the area that seems that way, and it'll expose it. And then we're going to talk about just a ton of $1 apps to do even more with your photos. So we're actually going to talk about 5. So we're going to talk about Instagram, which is free, Aviary, which is free, PicLab is free, and so is PowerPoint. The only one that is going to cost you a little bit, if you want to add some extra features on PicLab, which we'll talk about, you can pay an extra $1, but otherwise the rest of these will be free. So first one is Instagram. Can you raise your hand if you've used Instagram in the past? You do that by just clicking the little raise your hand button on the right.
A bunch of folks raising their hand, but no.
So it looks like we got a decent number of folks using Instagram. You've probably seen it. You can now include video on Instagram as well. But in general, it's basically a social network for photos, where you can simply take a photo using these principles, and then, but with one click, add an interesting effect. Add a different tone to it, change the color scheme, add some of the focus on it. If you haven't used it, I would definitely recommend at least playing around with it. Even if you don't use it to share specifically on Instagram, it's really easy to share photos from Instagram, either to your email, to Facebook, to Twitter, to Tumblr, and basically any social media network you need. And it's basically, it can make anyone from a beginner to an expert look like an expert using photography. Aviary is another one. Has a little bit more advanced features. than Instagram or anything like that. It does have some of the one-tap effects where you can just click it and it'll change the color. But it also allows some extra things. So you can enhance it on a scale, so you can change contrast, colors, and some of the different options with a sliding scale instead of just one click. You can crop your photos. So, when we're talking about filling the frame, you can take a lot of photos, and if you have one that they have a great facial expression, you can crop it to make sure that you're filling the frame well. You can also add fun stickers over the top and different mustaches and hats, and all of the fun little things you might want to do. And you can also do drawing on it as well, just with your finger. And if your photo is a little off tilt, you can also flip the orientation a little bit. So this next one, PicLab, is one of my favorites. This is great for creating quick graphics on Facebook or using just to share on Instagram or stuff like that. But basically, if you take a photo, you can add the text, like the picture in front of you, really simply. All you have to do is type in your text, and choose a font. You can see the star and kind of the design at the bottom and the banner around the text on the second and fourth line. That stuff is an extra $1, but it's worth that extra $1 on my part because it's easy to make this stuff. And you can make a Facebook graphic and turn your picture into a great actionable graphic in about 30 seconds. I actually made one right before this presentation that I'm going to share later from my organization that you can see tonight that I made in about 15 seconds. So this is one most folks would almost never think of to use for photo editing. So I'm going to kind of show you the steps, and I did this all in PowerPoint for this presentation. So you take a base photo, like that awesome one of the ironworker rebuilding the world, One World Trade Center, and then you click Shape and just lay it over the top. Then you can change the color. You can make it either transparent, you can make it full color, and then you can just simply put words over the shape. Now, you have two options after you put the words over. You can do File and then save the slide as a picture, or if you know how to screenshot, and if you don't know how to screenshot on your individual computer, if you just Google it, it will let you know. Otherwise, you can take a screenshot and actually set the dimensions of the photo. And again, in about 20 to 30 seconds, or if it takes a little longer, even a minute, you can have a great graphic to share on Facebook that isn't going to take you a long time, but can add some action to your amazing photo. So this next one I wanted to talk about is called Photo Circle. For a lot of us that are in organizations, all the staff usually aren't all at one event or one location. So what you're able to do with Photo Circle is when folks, and this is for Android and iPhone, when folks are out at events, they can take photos and share them to a specific group. So you create a group. So I created a group called New Organizing Institute on Photo Circle. And to be clear, all of these photos will be private. No one else can see them but the people you invite. So no one else can see the photos in New Organizing Institute except the people in my group. So what I did is invited the staff to take photos and to join the group so they can take photos and add them right from their phone into this. Now the best part about this is, so if I'm sitting back at headquarters or at the campaign office and field organizers are out on the ground, they can take photos while they're canvassing, send them back to me, and then they can add a note over the top that said, I'm canvassing in this city, this is my name, and this is the time of day I went. So when I'm back at the campaign office or something like that, I could tweet out, our field organizer, Eric, is out at the Nats game tonight, and tweet this picture and live tweet events or field organizing events or any type of event quickly, but from a central location at a computer where I can make sure to spell check, make sure to get the formatting right, show the picture right, and even do some light photoing back at the office while still getting that authentic feel of actually being at the event. And you can actually share stuff right from Twitter, or right to Twitter and Facebook from this group if you'd like, or you could simply email it to yourself after you're done. And the next part is while the person posts the photo with a comment, you can also reply, and that'll pop up on their phone, and they can reply back. So what happens a lot of times is field organizers will send a picture, and they'll say, this is David from Chicago, and then I'll respond, do I have permission to use this photo? Are they okay with that? Then you can get the quick yes, make sure it's okay. All right, so I just wanted to open up the floor now to any questions. So folks can just go to the notes section, and I will try to answer your questions as best I can.
Anybody have questions? What is the best lighting for an up-close headshot?
Best lighting for an up-close headshot. So I don't have a lot of experience taking headshots. Most of mine are either outdoors or outside. My best thing, I just take a ton of photos. I move around the person. Like I constantly will move just kind of in a circle, maybe take like 8 or 9 photos from different angles and just see which one is best. For me, at least, I'm not a professional photographer, so I don't know about a lot about the professional lighting, but I just always tell people, take a ton of photos, and you're likely to find one that'll be good.
Yeah, and then just speaking as someone who's had headshots taken, I would say a couple of things. Like, I would definitely suggest taking them outside because it's a really low-cost way to get really good lighting. If you take a photo outside at around, say, 2 or 3 o'clock, that's probably the perfect amount of light that you would get. You want the person to look really bright and friendly in their photo, and sometimes the background of really strong lighting helps that. As always, we make the training available. If you go to aflcio.org/digitaltraining with an S, we put up the PowerPoint and a video of the presentation after the fact. So please, you can find the presentation there for those of you who are asking for it. Someone says, do you recommend using Picasa to edit pictures?
Yes. And if I may do a little promo here I would definitely recommend signing up for the new organizing tip of the day. I actually wrote a tip last week about using Picasa. It's one of my favorites for your computer because it's free. You can I'm sure, if you know about it, you've probably used it. It's one of the best for quickly cropping photos, as well as adding kind of those one-touch effects. And the other best part about it is it saves your original photo, so if you screw up and make a mistake, you can still go back and start over again, which I know, especially when I'm working on stuff, is always the best. Jess is actually going to share the link where you can sign up for Tips of the Day, where we send out organizing tips about stuff like photography and digital organizing and stuff like that too.
What's the difference between using Photo Circle and just sending it via text?
So the one thing about Photo Circle is it keeps it contained. And one thing I know whenever I'm doing work, I like to keep all of my work in one place. So when I have text coming in from people all over the field, so like we only have a 30-person organization, so we have one circle. But some of like the statewide will do individual city photo circles. Some of them will do regions. But it just allows me to respond faster and easier. I just find it's easier to organize that way and easier to share that way.
Okay. Android apps?
Android apps, so Aviary is for Android, I believe. I believe every single one, except for maybe PicLab, is Android, because Photo Circle's Android, and Aviary is Android.
The other thing, one of the ones that Eric didn't mention, but which I think is also a really good app, is you can actually do Photoshop Express on your iPhone. I'm pretty sure it's also on Android too. Yep. I want to say it's like $6, but it was $6 very well spent. So I highly recommend that as well. I don't have Photoshop on my computer. I only have it on my phone, and it's very easy to use. What were the 4 principles again? Feels like maybe you should go when we repost the video or a PowerPoint. You'll be able to look that.
I can
look that up.
Oh, yeah.
And Eric will also post them on Twitter.
Yes.
So if you go to One U Digital, they'll be on, the 4 principles will also be on Twitter.
Yeah.
Do you have a sample waiver that you can send us? What we'll do is when we post that on our, when we post the video and the PowerPoint, we'll also post a sample waiver. That's a really great question. I want to make sure folks have that. We do have one here at the AFL. How do you take photos off of your iPhone?
There's a couple ways you can do it. If you have a Mac, you can share it between your two. Otherwise, I just email them. Another really simple way is if you use Dropbox, you can install a Dropbox app on your iPhone and just drop them on there, and then they're automatically online, so they're available on your computer and phone at the same time.
Thoughts on MS Paint? Despite the fact that I am like a big old digital nerd, I still use PowerPoint, MS Paint, Microsoft Office products to do all my photo editing. In fact, Microsoft like Office Photo, it's like whatever the one that comes with your thing is, has an auto correct button that just corrects everything for you, which is really helpful. So I definitely have used Paint before. The only thing about Paint is that it can be harder to put text on. So I recommend trying to use, if you're, you just want to stay within the Office suite of tools, to use PowerPoint for that, just because like it's just a lot easier to lay text over. Okay, another question. When taking photos at a rally or event, would it be best to display something stating that the picture may be displayed online to avoid any issues?
So one thing, that comes up a lot, right? Like, especially in Wisconsin, like large groups and stuff. A lot of times with large groups, people just go ahead and take the picture. It's really when it's individual zoomed in is when we get the waiver. A lot of that is just what your organizational policy is, but most of the time when it's giant groups like big rallies, stuff like that, I feel pretty comfortable posting it because it's not a defined person. It's when it's like one person making a call that folks usually have an issue.
So a rule that I've heard used is if a picture has more than 10 subjects in it, you don't have to get a waiver for it. Less than 10 subjects and you have to get a waiver. At rallies with thousands of people, if you just put up a big sign or even hundreds of people, if you just put up a big sign that says, like, past this point, anything can be used, for promotional materials, that's usually all you need to do to satisfy sort of the legal concerns. Okay, someone says, can you post the website on the notes? Did that. Okay, someone says, can you make a file in your Dropbox and make it just so certain people can access it? If so, how? I think you can.
What you do for Dropbox is you can either, you can make it a personal Dropbox. You can either make a folder and share that folder with a certain number of people, or if you just want to share one individual file, you put something in your Dropbox. You either right-click or check mark or whatever you have to do online, but it says share link, and Dropbox will create an individual link that you can share with any number of people that will give them access to only that file.
Awesome. Any other questions? Any other questions? What if you're using a picture from a job site? Whose permission are you required to get? Building owners or contractor? So Brian asks, what if you're using a picture from a job site? Whose permission are you required to get? Building owners, contractor? That's such a good question. And I think it probably depends on the site. I think it matters what site it is. For instance, if it's a public job site like a government office, then it may be, there may be rules on when you can and cannot take pictures. If it's a construction site for a private company, as long as you probably talk to the foreman or for a person, it's like probably fine. I would say it depends on your relationship with the folks at the job site. But in my experience, it's always better to ask permission. Otherwise, you run the risk of not being able to use the photos. Someone says, using Dropbox is probably an easier way to share large photos. Do you agree?
Yeah. Yes. Just in general, Dropbox is great. it all kind of depends on what you need. Like I said, the only reason I use photo circle is because it creates a conversation about that individual photo instead of adding confusion about what people are texting or calling about.
What were the 4 apps again that you mentioned?
So I talked about, and it'll be in the presentation, but they were Instagram, Aviary, PicLab, PowerPoint, and Photo Circle.
Any recommended apps for Windows Phone? I got nothing.
I have to say, I have had I've had an iPhone for probably too long. I have never had a Windows phone. So my best suggestion would be at this point to transfer them to your computer. I do not know any Windows apps.
My guess is also, like, in this case, the app stores themselves can be really helpful. If you go, it'll tell you what the most popular apps are, sometimes within a category. And usually those are a pretty good indicator that the app is, like, cheap or user-friendly. I recommend doing that because both Eric and I are not Windows Phone experts, for sure. Should you make the photo the highest resolution on an iPhone?
That is a great question. I am going to say yes because, especially when you're sharing on Facebook, like we talked about that grainy image from the Obama campaign, you're going to share it normally where it's bigger. Now you're going to have to take into effect how much space you have on your phone and how often you plan on going through and deleting all those images. But I always go for the highest resolution and deal with it later because you don't want to skimp on that stuff. You don't want to take a great photo that has a great action shot, a great person smiling, and then get back to the office and it's too pixelated or too blurry to use.
Yep. More questions? And someone also did a thing about about Windows apps. I really appreciate that, Deanna. That looks great. More questions? No more questions? So unless folks have more questions, we're done for today. So we'll keep it open for just a few more minutes for more questions. But if you feel like all your questions are answered, feel free to hop off. We'll stay on just a few more minutes for any questions folks may have, though. Thank you so much for joining us.
And feel free to tweet at us at any time. I'm at Eric Ming 5, and you are at Jess Livmo, correct? Mm. And use One U Digital.
Thanks, all. Really appreciate you joining us.